Hey guys, Adam here with AmericanMuscle.com. Today we're taking a closer look at and of course installing our Airaid cold air dam intake with the SynthaFlow oiled filter, available for the 11 and newer 5.7 HEMI, 6.4 HEMI, and 3.6 V6 Challenger. You should be checking this out for your own Challenger if you're looking to ditch the factory intake tubing as well as the filter to pick up a filter that is going to be way bigger of an upgrade to give you horsepower and torque gains, as well as throttle response and acceleration, and just a better filtration capability. This particular option is their SynthaFlow oiled filter, and if you're shopping around in the category, you've noticed a lot of different options. Not only just a wide range of brands, but Airaid themselves has several to choose from. Their cold air dam intake is not a full, complete cold air intake as far as tubing going back to the throttle body, but instead you're replacing your factory heat shield, paper element filter, and some of the couplers in the tubing to just give you a more budget-friendly option with some big upgrades. The biggest thing right here is going to be that oiled filter. As you can see, it has a red multi-layer cotton gauze finish in a conical shape with a diamond wire mesh outer layer. This is going to have a 99.99% filtration capability and filtration efficiency rate, which is a huge upgrade over the factory option. This thing here, being an oiled filter, is going to do a much better job filtering out those tiny particles that will then get caught in that oil, while also pulling in a lot more cold air than your factory filter ever could. With that said, there is also this option in the dry filter as well, with both a black finish and a blue finish. As far as black and blue goes, that's just an appearance thing, personal preference of course, but dry versus oiled is a debate that goes on a lot. Dry versus oiled filters are within a 1% difference of performance capabilities and the amount of cold air it's pulling in, but depending on your location, you might want to pick one up over the other. The dry filter option, which is the black or blue option in the category, is a great choice for guys out there in a lot more dry climate areas, seeing a lot more air pollution and debris, because all of that won't clog up in the oiled filter. The oiled filter does tend to get clogged up a little bit more, requiring some more maintenance, which means when you pop it off and wash it, you just also have to re-oil it. However, oiled filters will do a better job filtering out some of those particles while also pulling in cold air. So there is a give and take to it, but I will say within a 1% difference, the oiled filter here is the most common aftermarket filter to pick up because it does have a really big performance benefit. With that said, this is an eco-friendly, washable, reusable. When it comes time for routine maintenance, you just pop this thing off, wash it, and you can throw it right back in without having to pick up a new filter like you would with your factory option. It also comes with an upgraded heat shield. That's a black powder-coated aluminum option that has weather stripping that'll seal in up against the inside of your hood to keep all the excess engine bay heat out while pulling in the cold air for the intake tubing. We'll assemble that in just a little bit, but it also comes with a velocity stack that will then bolt up to the heat shield that's going to help streamline that air into your factory tubing. This is a really good way to keep the budget down. Airaid offers some of the most premium options in the category, which can get a little bit more expensive around the $400+ mark. This one here comes in right around $250 because it doesn't come with all of the bells and whistles of a full intake tubing, while still reaping the benefits of one of the best filters on the market. Airaid's been around for years, and this is their absolute specialty. They're one of the kings in the category. It comes with other couplers and fittings as well. It's worth noting that since this kit does fit the 3.6, 5.7, and 6.4, there are a couple of different fittings and couplers in the kit, as well as hoses, for the different engine types. You want to make sure that you're using the one specific to your application. Because we're working with our 2013 5.7 Challenger behind me, we'll be using the 5.7 fittings. The install instructions in your kit will determine which ones are which and which ones you should use for application, so make sure you're taking a look at that before you start the install. Install gets 1 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter. Anybody can tackle it in the driveway at home with very simple hand tools, and because it's not a full intake, it should only take an hour, maybe even a little bit less. I'll take you through every step of the process, but the first thing I want to show you is how to get that factory intake out. We'll take a look at that side by side comparing the filters. We'll start assembling some things on the table, and then we'll get to the install. Tools used in this install include an impact gun or a ratchet, an 8 and 10 millimeter deep socket, 5/32 and 3/16 hex sockets, Phillips head, and flathead screwdrivers. The uninstall is extremely easy. All we need to pop off is our factory heat shield with the filter. And in order to do that, step number 1 is to remove your crankcase breather hose. Just pull straight back on that. The second step, grab your impact gun or your ratchet and an 8 millimeter socket. Remove the retainer bolt holding that onto the frame. We're gonna set that aside and loosen up this clamp holding the heat shield to the factory tubing. From there, you can disconnect, lift straight up, and the factory heat shield is removed, you can set this aside. So we finally got that factory intake filter off of our 5.7 on the table next to our Airaid cold air dam intake with the oiled filter. Just a quick side-by-side comparison. I know I already took you through all the details and all of the materials here, but I took apart our factory top here, and this is the lid that just unscrews and pops right off. Inside that, you'll find your factory paper element. That's a flat filter, very flexible, not oiled, so this is a dry filter, so that comparing to your factory option is going to be a big difference. And it also doesn't have all of the thick multi-layer cotton gauze. It's not conical, so it's not going to have the airflow streaming into the velocity stack, and it also doesn't have the extra diamond wire mesh on the outside. So filtration capabilities here are not even comparable to your new Airaid one. It's just simply not going to compare. This is something that is just going to not stand the test of time. You're being robbed of a little bit of power, some power that you would get with an aftermarket intake just like this, and the heat shield that it comes with is just going to allow more cold air to be sucked in. While this does do a good job of trapping out the excess engine heat, it's not doing the best job of pulling in more cold air. So this is going to be the best of both worlds. Just wanted to take a second to compare the two and show you guys some of the differences. I first want to set this aside. We're going to start assembling that heat shield and other aspects of it, and then we're going to get to the install. The first step of assembling everything on your table here is to grab your heat shield panels, and they're essentially going to attach just like this. Now we do have a few screws included in the kit. They're really small, so just grab a Phillips head screwdriver, the washers, the screws, and the cap nuts. These are going to essentially bolt these together with these two open holes. So we're going to put that through the inside, line that up, and set that nut into place. Now the teeth on the back side of these nuts are going to grip the back side of this panel and keep it nice and tight. Now that we have all of that assembled for our paneling, we're going to assemble our velocity stack by bolting that up with the hardware provided. Once you tighten that down, you can grab your weather stripping and we'll start to assemble them. In the kit, there are two thin, very small weather strippings included. You want to make sure that you're installing those across the bottom here and across the opposite side paneling. Now they will just squeeze right into place. You can just put pressure all around, pop that right on. That'll go on pretty simply. And then the same thing around this curved edge, starting from the bottom. Next step, we're going to set this aside. That will get installed into the vehicle in just a moment. But next, I want to assemble things on our coupler. Now there are three included in the kit. One is going to be for your 3.6 liter V6 models. This one here is for our 5.7 since we're working with our 2013 5.7 RT. And the third one is for the 6.4 liter 392 SRTs. So this is the one we're going to use. Now you want to make sure you're selecting the one for your application. And there are also different size grommets and different size hose fittings for each application. So we've got our 5.7 set up here. Just make sure you're using the one for your motor. The instructions included in the kit will let you know which one goes where. So next, we're going to take our coupler and our rubber grommet for our 5.7 and just install this into place. That will hug the sides. Take your hose fitting and install that into the rubber grommet. You want to make sure that that rubber grommet doesn't fall through. It'll just snap right into place. The hose that you're going to install this to is also specific to each model. This is the one we're going to use. We're not going to install this just yet. We want to make sure that this is going to fit right on over our factory portion. So that will go in once this is installed in the vehicle. You want to make sure you're pre-installing this before you get into the vehicle. The hose will install later on. All right, there's a couple of steps that we have to do before we can drop our heat shield into place. Number one, grab a flathead screwdriver and pry off this retainer clip. We're not going to need that for what we're doing. Once that's off, just set it aside. Secondly, we're going to take the rubber grommet included in the kit that has the threading on the backside and install that onto the factory grommet on the inside of our fender well. Just going to push that straight down into position. If you need to, grease or lube can definitely help you get that in. Once that's in place, grab a 10mm socket, an impact gun, or a ratchet, and remove the bolt on the side of our fender. So grab that socket and pop off that fender bolt. That's going to get reinstalled in just a minute, so set that aside for now. The next step is to actually just drop our entire heat shield into place. Now the bottom portion with that weather stripping is going to go between your ABS line and the sheet metal. So you want to go straight down with this, lining up those bracket tabs. This tab here is going to go underneath of that factory one. So we're going to bend that so that goes underneath, lining up those holes. While this bracket is attaching and lining up to the grommet we just installed. The side bracket you want to make sure lines up with the factory fender bolt. That one I'm actually going to install right now. You can do that by hand, then we'll come back with an impact gun. All right, just want to tighten up that fender bolt. Now when you have this installed, you want to make sure your velocity stack is seated properly with the larger portion on the inside. That's what's going to attach your new air filter. So have that installed with the hex screws provided in the kit. I'm using a 5/32 hex screw that tighten these down. They'll tighten it down from the outside as you see here. This side is going to attach to our coupler that's going to attach to our factory tubing. But at this portion, before we get into that, we're going to install the bolt down here to the grommet and the bolt up here to the factory tab. All right, your larger hex bolt is going to go on with a flat washer down to that grommet, lining up those holes, inserting that through, and just start that threading by hand. The last screw that's going into place is your 5/32 fourth screw. That's going to attach to this factory bracket with another flat washer. So we have that in place, we can gun that on. Now a 3/16 socket is going to tighten down that final one down by the grommet. The next step is our rubber coupler included in the kit. This is going to install with your clamps. You want to have one installed on each end but not tightened. It's going to go on the other end of our velocity stack. Stretch that, and if you need to, loosen up those clamps to make sure that they can flex. Slide that into place. Now that first clamp on the velocity stack you can tighten down with an 8mm socket or a flathead screwdriver. This one leave loose for now. Grab the tubing included in the kit that has the hose fitting we installed attached to it. That's going to go in between. Now this coupler or this hose fitting attaches a very specific way. You can see the locking tab on the factory tubing is going to seat into this indent, and you want to make sure the hose fitting is facing the factory hose. Compress that to squeeze this into place. Install it onto the coupler we just installed on our velocity stack. From there, install the factory tubing, rotating that into that tab. Perfect. Grab an 8mm socket and tighten down the factory clamp and your new one. Next step is to take our 5/8 tubing, the shorter one. We're going to install that over the hose fitting that we installed on our coupler. You can stick your hand through the velocity stack to hold support while you push that through. And that'll connect down to the lock. On the other end, install the next fitting. That's going to go straight down, and on the opposite end, your factory tubing. All right, the next step is to grab our oiled filter, drop that into place with a clamp around the end here. That's going to wrap around that velocity stack. Then just turn it so it flattens out and fills up the entire heat shield. Grab an 8mm socket or a flathead screwdriver and tighten down this clamp. All right, there's only 2 steps left. Next one is going to be our weather stripping around the outside of this box, and the last one will be our engine cover. All right, the weather stripping is just going to snap into place right around the edges. And the inside of this stripping has aluminum or metal of some sort just to squeeze on, so it'll hold itself in place. Just line the edges with it, and that's done. The last step, just throw our engine cover back on. This cover you just want to line up with the holes, and you'll be able to snap it into place, making sure that your hose fits into that slot. Pressure all around to make sure it snaps in, and you're good to go. Well guys, that's gonna wrap up my review and install for the Airaid cold air dam intake with the SynthaFlow oiled filter, available for the 11 and newer 5.7 HEMI, 6.4 HEMI, and 3.6 V6 Challenger. You can pick yours up right here at AmericanMuscle.com.